Yeah, you good? Good evening, everyone. We are live at 6 o'clock and we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order in the interest of everyone's time getting here. Thank you so much for being here. I know July is always a busy time, lots of holiday travel and vacations and celebrations. So again, we'll get started and start with the adoption of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Second.
A first and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Public comment, do we have anybody that signed up for public comment? Not seeing any staff members coming in with that, so we'll move past that. The ethics and awareness conflict of interest reminder. Neil?
In accordance with the State Government Ethics Act, it is the duty of every board member to avoid conflict of interest. Does any board member have any known conflict of interest with respect to any of the matters coming before the board today? If so, please identify the conflict and refrain from participation in a particular matter involved.
Okay, hearing none, we'll move on from there. Thanks, Neil. Item number 5, our consent agenda.
Good to see you.
Get a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Mayor Becker? Mayor Knox, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6, just a quick update on the NCDOT I-77 South Express lanes. Our team that's generally here, when that rolls in pretty deep, they are actually at a conference in Washington, D.C. It's the ARTBA P3 conference. So they are very much socializing this project with proposed, hopefully, lots of developers on that. Just a quick reminder that, the comment period for the board is still out there. If you have questions, please reach out to Carly or Brett if you've not already done so. And, we're obviously looking forward to a lot of strong competition, and our, work group worked diligently with the NCDOT and the Turnpike Authority to come up with those terms that I think we were very loud and clear and very clear that we want competition, we want a great project, and that we want to make sure that it's much improved from the process prior. So, is there any questions? Anybody on there we could try to comment? Okay, great. We'll move on to our item number 7. Travis Johnson's going to help us with the 2028-2037 TIP development process. And this is the NCDOT Prioritization 8.0. Travis, tell us some good news.
Thank you very much. Again, Travis Johnson with the CRTPO to give you an overview of Prioritization 8.0, and then to come also to ask you to open a public comment period on the draft Prioritization 8.0 project lists, and that's for all modes. So start off, Prioritization 8.0, it's a data-driven process. Currently, we're in the project identification stage of the process. That's where we work with our municipalities, transit agencies, and to identify projects for submittal. These results guide the funding and programming for the Transportation Improvement Program. And so for prioritization, we consider projects for aviation, bicycle and pedestrian, highway, rail, and public transit. Projects fit inside of each of the modes, projects fit into one of 3 categories. They are either categorized as a carryover, a holding tank, or a new project. Carryovers are projects that have been submitted previously, but they were either a sibling project, which means they've been broken out from another project, or they have active documents, and so those don't count towards our overall submittal allotment. We have holding tank, which are previously submitted but don't qualify as carryover, and then we have new projects. Those are projects that are not previously scored. So for carryover projects, they're currently in the STIP, but they're not scheduled for delivery. So these are your projects that are in the last 5 years. They have completed or active environmental documents. They're siblings of program projects. An example of this is when a project gets the letters at the end of the name. So if you think about US 74, that's 2509, but now there's U2509A, B, C. So if it's one of those sub projects, then it counts as a carryover project and gets resubmitted. And then any committed projects scheduled for delivery that are currently included in the 2024-2043 STIP. For holding tank projects, these have been previously submitted in prioritization cycles, and these may be evaluated, but we're not required to resubmit these. They did not qualify as carryover projects, and typically we review these projects and compare it with our currently adopted plans and also our MTP fiscally constrained project list. And then for new projects, for highway projects, we select those based upon the MTP horizon year and score. Again, the horizon year is when we expect it to be open to the public, and then the score is the rank it gets through the two-tier evaluation process. And then typically if a project is not in the MTP, then it would not be submitted by the CRTPO for highway projects for the next prioritization cycle. For non-highway, and that includes aviation, bicycle, pedestrian, rail, and transit, we go to our member jurisdictions and our transit providers to request these projects, and these typically need to be on an adopted plan. We typically do not fill these lists to the maximum number of submittal slots because of the limited funding that is available through this process. So it's a less competitive process than it is for the highway projects. For this prioritization cycle, we are supposed to have 34 project submittal slots. So while carryover projects do not count our total submittal slot allotment, if a carryover project is elected not to be resubmitted, then that project adds an additional carryover slot for our submittals. So if we have a highway project that's in the carryover, it doesn't count towards the 34 total, but if you elect to not submit one of those projects, we will then get an additional highway submittal slot. So we're not penalized for not resubmitting a project. So that'll affect this project or our prioritization 8 because one project on our list, the member jurisdiction elected to not resubmit it. So we'll actually have 35 submittals for highway. So for carryover holding tank and new projects for non-highway projects, we did not exceed the 34 submittal slots. So all projects that were submitted, we will be submitting for prioritization 8.0. We have all the project lists on the website, and you can scan this QR code, which will also take you to the project lists and also an interactive map if you would like to see what those projects are. Again, we worked with our airports, our transit agencies, and our jurisdictions to submit projects or to select projects to be considered for these categories, and then we will work to submit these if the project lists are endorsed. For highway projects for carryover, while they did not, or we mentioned they don't count towards the 34 submittal slots, we did have one jurisdiction elect. So again, that'll be adding one more submittal slot for the highway project list. And then for holding tank projects, once we got beyond the carryover list, we compared the project list to our draft 2055 MTP fiscally constrained project list. And so we looked at that list to make sure that the projects that we were considering for resubmittal in the holding tank were in that fiscally constrained draft project list. Because the TIP is a subset of the MTP, and all of the projects in the TIP need to be a part of the MTP. So either it's added because we submit it and it's a project that was originally MTP, or it gets amended into it. So we typically try to align those two processes. So for the holding tank and new projects, the projects that we are recommending for them to stay in the list are the projects that are in that fiscally constrained project list. And if a project is in the not recommend for resubmittal list, that means it's either in the draft 2026, 2035 STIP first 5 years. So it's a project that made it to get funded. It was never submitted for the 2055 MTP. And through that process, we asked member jurisdictions to submit every project you would like to see move forward. Or if it was not included in the fiscally constrained project list, because that is the list that we are saying as a region in the MTP, we would like to see completed by 2055. And the main funding mechanism for the MTP is the TIP. So those two project lists will need to align if that is the goal for the region. New projects were added based upon score and horizon year in the fiscally constrained project list. If you would like to see, again, that list is on our website, is on our web page. This will check you directly to the page where it shows the interactive map for highway, non-highway, all the projects lists separated by mode and category. So if I open the public comment period, we're going to collect feedback by email, through social media, through our web page. We're going to have a comment period through an online form using Airtable. We're going to coordinate with the member jurisdictions to utilize your social media and to share the information as much as we can. We'll also be reviewing the 2055 NTP fiscally constrained project list comments. As you know, we're in a comment period for that draft list. And those projects, most of those projects on that list will also be in these lists. So we're going to try to identify where there might be overlapping comments just to share and make everyone aware when a comment might have been made on the NTP, but it might also apply to the TIP. And when we get, into prioritization 8.0, and then also when we get into the TIP public comment period later, we'll again look for those comments that might apply to multiple comment periods, because there's a good chance projects will appear on all three lists, and we don't want to lose any public feedback that might have gotten into one list and maybe missed another. And then we'll share a summary of the comments at the August CRTPO board meeting, and then we'll share any updates on the CRTPO P8.0 website. So for project list modifications, again, the board may adjust the project list based upon public feedback. Also, since we're in the public comment period for the 2055 NTP, if there are any major changes to that project list, we should evaluate also then updating P8 project list if there's anything significant, if projects are removed or whatever happens with that list, as far as it goes for projects set in priority. And we'll update through our website and social media and what those changes are, what those changes could be. So we went to the TCC for a recommendation on July 10th. We're here now asking for approval for public comment period. We would do a public comment period from July 17th to July 31st. We then come back in August for a recommendation from the TCC to the board for August 20th to endorse the project list. And then we need to have all projects submitted to SPOT by September 30th. After the projects are submitted, they go into where the SPOT office evaluates and scores all the projects. Then from June to December in 2026, we would be assigning local input points. Through winter and spring into spring of 2027 is when they will calculate final scores, add local input points to those final scores. And then summer of 2027, when we'd have our draft 2028-2037 STIP. So with that, the request again is to open a public comment period on the draft prioritization 8.0 project list. I also want to mention that there's one deviation from the project list that was shared to the TCC. There was one aviation project that was missing from the project list. So you'll see that as another Charlotte Douglas International project, and this is a new project. But again, we have more than enough submittal slots available for aviation projects, and Charlotte Douglas competes at the statewide level, which is the only airport in our region that competes at the statewide level. So that has been added back to the list, and so that was the only deviation from what the TCC recommended. So with that, I can answer any questions you might have.
Good. Questions for Travis?
Move to open the public comment period. Second.
Got a motion on the floor in a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries. Just to kind of make sure that I'm understanding and that public understands, if they want to make public comment on there, that they go to the page, the written comments can go by email, or they can sign up for
So
the.
we're going to send out an announcement for the public comment. We have an online form which you can complete, which will have like identify the STIP ID and the name of the project and your comment. So we'll record it that way. We will accept email comment as well, which again will be on the web page and we'll put in the news release. We'll also then post this on our social media. So it's either email, you can give me a phone call, or you can complete the form. So any way you get us the feedback, like how I do any for our typical cycles, we will collect it all into one location and then summarize it.
We'll look for that information then, I guess, starting tomorrow.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number 8, the 2055 Metropolitan Transportation Plan. Again, just an FYI updates, Neil and Merritt.
Good evening. So Merritt and I are here to give you an update on the outcomes of the phase 2 of public engagement for the 2055 Metropolitan Transportation Plan from what we've heard so far. Provide a brief overview of the fiscally constrained project list, which is the subject of the second phase of public engagement, and we'll close with some ongoing activities. Quick review of the schedule here. We are in the second phase of public engagement. Again, that will go until this Saturday. There is one more phase of public engagement associated with the 2055 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and that really is focused on the the draft report. We will likely have the draft report ready towards the end of the calendar year and either start public engagement in December, or it might start in January. And then the last action really is the culmination of that, which is the adoption of the 2055 MTP document, which is scheduled for this board in March of 2026. So with that, I'll turn it over to our public engagement coordinator, Merritt McCulley, to tell you about what we've been hearing in regards to feedback on our draft project list.
Thank you, Neil. Good evening, everyone. As Neil had said, we still have 3 days left in the public comment period, but I'm very excited to share with everyone what we've done so far as public engagement. And as many of you know, the public comment period started June 19th, but the work that the team put into leading up to the public comment period was months and months before, setting up relationships with different stakeholders, with different venues and events, some of which had to be reserved months ahead of time, and also speaking with our TCC reps and getting feedback from those around us to finally meet people where they are, to get that community feedback about the MTP fiscally constrained project list. So today I just want to talk about what we heard and a little bit about our process for community engagement, and then and talk about how all that went. So our activities were mostly encompassing with digitally delivered means. So we had an interactive map in which residents could click on the map for different projects they wanted to see more details on, with 3 different categories of intersection, corridor, and transit projects. And there was also a survey co-located with those with that map that people could answer more pointed questions about the goals and objectives of the MTP and whether they felt like these projects aligned with those goals and objectives. So we talked to people about this at different pop-up events throughout the planning area, as well with people more in depth at different equity focus groups. And so here's our schedule that you've probably seen before for our pop-up events. This is the final schedule. We've had a few reschedulings and a few rain delays for some of our events, but the public comment period opened on Juneteenth, so naturally we had a couple of Juneteenth festivals in there. We also had quite a few farmers markets throughout the planning area, just because we wanted to be at events where the vendors were the main attraction, and us being one of those vendors. We also wanted to be at events, especially ones that are in Charlotte, that could bring a crowd from throughout the region and not just Charlotte. So for an example, at the University City Juneteenth Art Fest, I talked to a couple of women who are from Harmony, North Carolina, in Iredell County. At the Mad Miles Run Club, we met people from not just other counties in our planning area, but even outside of our planning area. So we really wanted to be at events where we could get the most bang for our buck, so to speak. And we do have 2 more events in Iredell County coming up this weekend, so we're excited about that as well. But why tell you about all these events when I could actually show you? So once again, I'll go from the left and give a little explanation for some of the other ones. We really wanted to hit up the farmers markets, including the Rosa Parks Farmers Market on the west side. In the middle image on the top, you can see Neil talking to a gentleman at the Davidson Juneteenth Festival. If you go right, you see Curtis talking to someone at the Union County Farmers Market. Down below is myself talking with a younger advocate for transportation projects at the University City Art Fest. And then we also see Bob talking with a family at the Huntersville Growing Fest. So 2 big takeaways I want to take from this slide is that we really pushed our engagement out to different parts of the planning area, and also that this was truly a team effort. So I really appreciate all of the staff members on CRTPO for really making this a success. And we also wanted to make sure that we're complying with our own limited English proficiency plan, and including those who don't necessarily speak English as their first language and part of the engagement process. So we collaborated with a nonprofit called Nueva Realidad in Iredell County, which had an event that we were going to attend, but they replaced that event with drop-off. So we gave 49 different goodie bags with items such as our transportation safety coloring book that some of you might have seen me have at the check-in table, as well as, of course, flyers talking about the MTP with QR codes to take the survey and also to sign up for our Spanish language equity focus group, which I'll be leading later this month. And then in the middle, you see another youthful transportation advocate enraptured by our prize wheel. So that's how we got quite a few people in, with Jarrell leading, going through a survey with a resident at a mostly Spanish language event that we had attended, as well as Theo at a soccer event for the youth, in which we were able to talk to people not just who spoke Spanish, but also people from other pockets of the immigrant and refugee community. And then the one event that we did include twice in our schedule was Mad Miles Run Club, and you see Kendall there tabling at Mad Miles, which I attended as well. That was by far our most successful event as far as getting surveys and really getting feedback from a population that has traditionally been undersurveyed in the young Black urban professional demographic. And so I had mentioned our equity focus groups earlier in our presentation. This was really a time where we wanted to create space and time for those who have traditionally not had their voices heard in the transportation planning process. And so collaborating with our consultant partners at Kimley Horn and Civility Localized, we had scheduled focus groups throughout our planning area, as well as a couple of Zoom virtual ones to give accommodations to those who have difficulty traveling and difficulty with their schedules. And we'll also have a Spanish one coming up, as I mentioned previously. But there's more. So we had, in addition to the pop-up events, we organize stakeholder meetings to talk to folks who have a particular interest in the transportation system. So economic development, thinking about employers and the commute for their employees and how that all ties into transportation, moving people and goods, talking about organizations such as the airport and emergency services, how that is important, sustainability and mobility, talking to different nonprofits that give human services to folks and their vested interest in transportation improvements. We gave a couple of community presentations at WUMA in Monroe, North Carolina, as well as youth activity with Freedom School partners. I also did a radio interview last week with 102.3 Caliente, which is a Spanish radio station. We wanted to make sure that we were getting the word out to the Spanish-speaking community, because even though we did have a couple events that had a mostly Spanish-speaking population, the stakeholders that we had built relationships with the months leading up to the public comment period had given us the feedback that in-person events wouldn't be sufficient to reach that population. So we wanted to make sure we were adjusting as necessary. And then the last opportunity for folks to engage is, of course, the one we're at right now, which is our regularly scheduled CRTPO board meeting. And so I did just want to show a bit of the youth activity we had. We had a handful of scholars from Freedom School partners join us in the Urban Design Center down in South End. And we played a planning game in which we talked, of course, about the MTP and CRTPO and what that is, but we gave the kids an opportunity to plan their own street, first as an open-ended prompt, and then one in which they planned a street specifically for an ADA population. So you see in the right-hand corner a product of one of the groups, which includes a lot of wide sidewalks and transit. And then why would we talk about this without actually showing the ramifications of transportation improvements? So Will Snyder, my colleague, led the kids around to show some improvements in the area where we were at and doing the activity. And of course, we passed them off surveys to hand off to their parents. So building the next generation of transportation advocates. And so here's a little bit of what we've heard so far. This is current as of July 14th. And once again, we split the projects in 3 different categories, and you can see the number of likes and dislikes for each category, with the likes outnumbering the dislikes overall. And surprise to no one, most of the comments and likes on transit projects were in Mecklenburg County. The likes and dislikes and comments refer to the actual project, not the origin of the person leaving the comment. So that's important to understand when we summarize these comments at the next board meeting. And so we're continuing that process of evaluating the comments that we received in the surveys, as well as comments that we've received via email and the letters that we have received, including a letter from the town of Cornelius referring to an interchange along I-77 and resident emails about the I-77 South Express Lanes project. And so that complete summary will be available to the board at the next board meeting in August. And I'll pass it back to Neil.
Thank you, Merritt. And I just want to recognize Judy and Merritt. This is really our first engagement opportunity post-pandemic. We had one last summer, but it was really focused around kicking off the plan, the goals and objectives and things. We got some great meaningful input there, but they've really upped their game by getting out in our communities, and not just in Charlotte. We've really made an effort to be out at pop-up events throughout our planning area. So I just think they've done a great job for us over the past month, and hope you see value in what they're doing as well. So just talking about the fiscally constrained project list as a tee up to the action that's going to be requested next month for this board to adopt the fiscally constrained project list. So beginning in January, we received project submittals from your member jurisdictions. We scored those projects, tier 1 evaluation that was mostly quantitative, the top of the funnel. And then we used the roadway ranking review committee, or R3C, to identify the tier 1 and tier 2 cutoff. We conducted the tier 2 evaluation. This is mostly a qualitative evaluation where we utilized the R3C members to help us assign those tier 2 scores. We completed cost estimates for all 216 projects, and we arrived at that fiscally constrained project list that we reviewed with you all at the June meeting with the request to open this public comment period. So some of the ongoing activities, we are working with the Bike Ped work group to update the active transportation corridors tool update. This is a tool for your jurisdictions, optional to use to identify corridors that may have competitive scoring discretionary projects. In terms of the financial plan, the roadway revenues and the revenues associated with the 4 fixed guideway transit projects, that work is completed, but we're working on completing the rest of the work on the financial plan with transit revenue projections, estimating the revenue projections for our discretionary program throughout the life of the plan, and NCDOT division maintenance revenue projections. These are all requirements by FHWA to be included in the financial plan. We will be bringing an update on this during our September meetings. And then the congestion management process, another federal requirement to be included within the MTP. We are reviewing the congested corridors identified through that process with our MTP advisory committee tomorrow. And then at the August 6th transportation staff meeting, we'll provide an overview to identify the congested corridors, and TCC members within your jurisdictions will identify mitigation strategies for these corridors, in addition to capacity within your jurisdictions. So again, looking ahead, the requested action at the August 20th meeting is to adopt the fiscally constrained roadway and transit project list. We will also present the complete phase 2 public engagement results. So that concludes our presentation. We're happy to take any questions that you have.
Questions for Neil or Councilmember Driggs?
So I just wanted to comment, for one, Merritt, thank you. The outreach is actually important. I think maybe you've had this experience. Somebody that wasn't paying attention finds out something and then comes back and says, "What was that? Why'd you do that? Why didn't anybody tell me?" So when we have this robust an outreach, we can say, look, we did everything we could. And if you didn't respond, then we can't help that. So it's a little bit for our protection as well as providing useful information. Appreciate it. What I was wondering is, are there any recommended actions that will accompany your report to us of what you heard? Are you just going to share the information about what people said, or are there any indications that something we should do differently because of it?
We're still in the process of assessing the comments that we're receiving, and staff will provide responses to all of the comments. And based upon that analysis, if there's anything within those comments that would merit some sort of deviation from the recommended fiscally constrained project list, we'll make the TCC and the board aware of that. But our initial assessment of what we're receiving indicates a lot of support for the draft list that's been developed so far.
No, I assume it's good. I just don't want a narrative to take hold that, yeah, we asked for your opinion and then we ignored it. I mean, we deal with that with the city. Look forward to seeing the comments and your thoughtful responses. Thank you.
Thank you.
No questions for either Neil or Merritt? Okay, hearing none, we'll see you in August, or everybody can certainly come to Mooresville on Friday to the hot rods and hops. So if you don't like cars and you like beer, you're good. If you don't like beer and you like cars, it's good. So be a great event. All right, moving on to our agenda item number 9, the post-census functional classification review. Curtis Bridges. Curtis, bring us up to speed.
All right, good evening. So we do want to bring for information to you tonight, our post-census functional classification system review. I mentioned we're bringing this for information. We do plan on requesting action from this board in August. So what is functional classification? I hate to read this verbatim, but I will because it is an important definition. The functional classification of roadways defines the role each element of the roadway network plays in serving travel needs. An accurate roadway functional classification system ensures that federal aid funds are allocated where they are most needed to enable people and goods to move fluidly through our transportation system. And what that looks like in terms of terms that you all are probably more familiar with is kind of what you see below that, the highway functional classification categories. We've got principal arterials, which include interstate, other freeways and expressways, and other principal arterials, also minor arterials, and then major and minor collectors and local roads. Why are we looking to modify functional classification? FHWA must review and update the functional class nationwide post-decennial census. So after each decennial census, that informs data management and reporting. It also greatly informs design and maintenance at the state and local level. And then most importantly, federal legislation continues to use functional classification in determining eligibility for funding under the federal aid program. So functional class updates is something that is not unfamiliar to your staff. Many of your staff have worked on this in the past. Our last system-wide update by NCDOT, Transportation Planning Division, was in 2013 after the then 2010 census. Since then, we've seen kind of one-off modification submittals in Statesville and Cornelius in 2017, Mooresville and Waxhaw in 2019, and then as recently as Brown Greer Road and Sandy Porter Road in Charlotte in 2023. So again, this is not something that's unfamiliar, but these are all kind of one-offs, or typically are kind of brought forth one at a time and on an as needed basis. This time around, the Transportation Planning Division had to submit a plan for this update with FHWA, and that included 5 steps. The first was to review the urban areas where TIP projects exist. The second was to get in the weeds, download and update the DOT's functional class statewide shapefile for mapping purposes. And then where we worked with them were on the final 3 steps, to review and evaluate our current local functional class networks, identify roadways proposed for modification, and then verify the existing roadway data, and then enter the desired or proposed change to that modification data. And the review or the schedule that TPD has been working under involved working with kind of with the MPO partners, the jurisdictions, in the spring of 2025. Their plan is to submit statewide recommendations to FHWA in September of this year. And then FHWA would approve, make their final approval in November of this year. So that's the overall schedule. And before I show you the summary of the functional class changes that we submitted, some of the constraints that we were working under, guidelines and constraints, are first that all functional class categories do exist in both urban and rural locations. Now, the states should assign functional classification according to how the roadway is functioning in the current year only. For future roads, which a lot of folks are interested in, the roads need to be functionally classified with the existing system if they're included in an approved STIP and are expected to be under construction within the first 4 years of the STIP. So those first 4 committed years. And then where applicable, the same classification should be given to both the future route and the existing route it's replacing until the future route is constructed. So it seems simple, but they do kind of cause a lot of work when you're looking at submittals and changes. So what that resulted in is we received 13 or received change requests from 13 submitters, 13 of your jurisdictions and counties. This was an iterative review process with DOT, TPD. We would get a batch of submittals in. When we had something we could share with TPD, they would review and ultimately reviewed our full list and gave us some feedback. So we've done that a couple times. They've been great to work with and been very involved in this process with us. We ended up receiving a total of 143 change requests that we submitted to TPD. We do anticipate final feedback from TPD this month in July, and then we'll move forward with that list in August. Again, they've had minor feedback, even to this point. I'm surprised at how minor the feedback has been. We anticipate any feedback they have going forward will be even more minor. So looking forward at the schedule moving forward. Of course, I mentioned the staff review process that we engaged in this past spring. Of course, we're bringing this to you this month for information. We will request approval by TCC and request your approval in August as well. And then we will submit to TPD, and they plan to submit again to FHWA in September of 2025. So I think that's the information I have for you there. I'll stop and see if you have any questions.
Questions for Curtis on the information? Yep. Mr. Helms?
Yes.
Thank you. Curtis, if you can go back to the slide on the future roads. Thank you, or
Yep.
future routes.
Yep.
Okay. So I've got a question, just a general question first, and that is, what is the threshold or the criteria for final approval for the reclassification or functional classification here for these projects? What kind of criteria is used to evaluate this and issue final approval?
Most of the criteria revolves around connectivity in the network, making sure that all those roads connected at either end, and making sure that the functional class being proposed matched up with the adjacent functional class or the adjoining functional class. And to some degree, the design of the road is, and there you can start getting into the criteria where it breaks out urban and rural and what the design and what the typical cross section looks like for the various roadways. And TPD will review that and make sure that those are in alignment with FHWA's guidance. And again, making sure that they are consistent with the existing road network. We didn't have a whole lot of instances where the timing came into play. There were a couple, but in general, that's what they're looking at.
So is it fair to say that this is somewhat of a wish list then at this point, and that this is likely to change before we see this potentially again in August? Is that?
No, I think it's fairly complete. I think the review that they've done so far, they given us good feedback on that consistency component and the connections of the network, making sure that it is consistent and connected at the or a functionally connected network. Don't have any gaps, don't have any issues. If you look at it from a mapping perspective, where a route is not connected to the rest of the network, or it's kind of isolated, or maybe there's a gap of major collector where it should be, minor connector on either end. I think we've addressed all those issues. So I think it's fairly complete. There might be something that someone catches that's, again, fairly minor, but nothing, I think at this point, nothing major that you would see before August.
Well, I bring that up because I've got some grave concern over one of these projects listed on this that was a divisive issue at a previous meeting.
Okay.
And it's my understanding that it's potentially ineligible.
All right. Which one is that?
That would be number 6. That would be the Waxhaw Parkway East.
Okay. Well, I may have to kind of get back to you on that. I don't have the list here in front of me or in the presentation.
Sure, I understand that, and we can go offline with this, but
Sure.
I wanted to draw that to your attention because again, I think that there may be some factors at play that would rule that as ineligible.
Okay.
I would welcome staff's input on that, and certainly we can follow up after the meeting or later this week even.
You said that was Waxhaw Parkway East?
Correct. Yes, sir. It's item number 6.
Number 6. Okay.
On our list here. So if you don't mind, I mean, we can certainly reach out to me or I'll reach out to you. But I would like for staff to look into that further.
Absolutely. We can do
Thank
it.
you.
Other questions or comments for Curtis? No? So we will see this in August. And Brian, I guess based on your question, we have the option to put this on consent, but if you need to get those answers and things, we'll leave this on the regular agenda just so that we make sure that we get those questions taken care of for you. Does that sound all right? All right, well, hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 10, active transportation scoring criteria update. Curtis, you're Still
Got
in
that
the
one too.
batter's box.
All right, so again, but this is an informational item. We want to bring our active transportation scoring criteria to you. This is formerly TAP criteria, so you probably heard that term several times. Some quick background on this initiative. Of course, our active transportation scoring was originally based on our old MUMPO bike and ped pedestrian criteria, or bike and ped scoring criteria. The Transportation Alternatives Program, or TAP criteria, kind of forced us to draft this new TAP criteria in 2015 to meet the then federal TAP funding requirement. We've since revised that criteria in 2017, again, kind of revised it and updated it in 2021. So it's been kind of a kind of living document that we've gone back and revisited several times to make sure we are kind of keeping it fresh. Why are we updating now? Staff have been compiling a package of recommendations based on feedback across multiple cycles of our discretionary grant calls. So for the past several years, we've just kind of been keeping track of issues that have come up and questions that have come up during those discretionary grants. The Bike and Ped Work Group has periodically discussed updates, the scoring categories and criteria to better serve our applicants and better serve the jurisdictions. And then staff anticipate incorporating many of these updates into the fall 2025 discretionary grants program project evaluation coming up here in August. Some of the key updates and revisions, and these are key. I mentioned at TCC, we could get into the weeds, and that's a fun discussion for some of our bike ped folks, but probably less fun for you all here around the table tonight. But so hit on the key components. We renamed our bicyclist and pedestrian scoring criteria, of course, to active transportation project scoring, more in line with what it's actually evaluating. Now we replaced our social equity criteria with NCDOT's Transportation Disadvantaged Indexed dashboard and criteria. Now we revised our health equity category to health impacts. We looked at the feasibility and costs criteria and removed the amount of available funding requested, that specific criteria. That criteria was effectively duplicated in the overall discretionary programs criteria where they're looking at the same question. So we didn't see the need to continue to duplicate that particular criteria. We importantly revised our criteria to meet more rural and suburban contexts, which tend to have fewer destinations and fewer safety warrants. That's been an issue for a lot of our kind of rural and suburban submitters who are looking at some of those projects. We looked specifically at projects in Davidson, Mint Hill, a couple others, to figure out how we can get those projects that are kind of right on the cusp of scoring well and get them a little more competitive with some of those other projects. And then also we enhanced our online criteria map to include newer analysis layers, again, for hopefully a quicker, easier analysis for our project submitters. So those are our key updates to the criteria. Obviously, we're bringing this to you for information. This month, we will plan to bring it back and request your action to approve it in August. And then our fall discretionary call opens up in August as well. We hope to have it ready to go then.
Questions for Curtis? Regards to that? On this, is everybody okay for this to be on consent next month? All right, we'll put that on consent. Sound okay, Neil?
Yep.
All right, moving right on to item number 11. Neil, what's our upcoming agenda items?
The August 20th CRTPO board agenda is anticipated to include action to approve the 2055 MTP roadway and transit fiscally constrained project list, action to endorse the prioritization 8.0 project list for submission to NCDOT for evaluation, endorse revisions to the functional classification system, and then approve the revisions to the active transportation scoring criteria, as well as opening a public comment period on the draft 2026-2035 transportation improvement program. We will have one information report on the discretionary grant program and a preview of the schedule for the 2025 fall project solicitation or fall call. And I believe Bob has some announcements.
Mr. Cook.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to make one, or actually, I guess, three quick announcements, all related to staff issues. And I think as you could tell from tonight's presentations, we're fortunate to have a top-notch staff. And occasionally we're able to recognize that talent. And so recently we've had a few promotions that I just wanted to let everyone know about. First was Travis, who talked to us earlier about prioritization. We were able to promote Travis from project to coordinator to project manager in recognition of all the work that he does that's related to the transportation improvement program and prioritization. That is a more than a full-time job. Particularly since STI, and STI has gotten more complex over the years. So we wanted to recognize the extra work that Travis has been doing on that front. And I don't think he's in the room. I'm afraid he must be doing something. I know. And then next is Will Snyder. He's also, I think, monitoring the chat via Zoom. So he's in an undisclosed location right now. We were able to promote Will from associate planner to planner. As you might know, that he was responsible for us obtaining the Safe Streets and Roads for All grant, over $3.1 million. Just shortly after he was joining us. So he will continue with that effort and focus on performance-based planning as well and other activities associated with what we do. And then last but not least, Neil, I'm very happy to report that here, as most of you know, we're housed here in the planning department with the city of Charlotte, and in the department was recently established a deputy division manager position. And I'm happy to report that Neil was the first person to fill that role within the planning department and the various divisions within the department. And that is in recognition of just all the work that Neil has done over the years for this organization, all their contributions, leading the Metropolitan Transportation Plan and guiding so many other efforts. And it's a well-deserved promotion and a long overdue one for Neil. So my thanks to all staff. So thanks for the time. I appreciate it.
Fantastic. That's always great news. Congratulations to all the staff promotions. The next item, everybody got a copy in their agenda of the NCDOT Division 10 and 12 updates. So they're there. And of course, our division engineers are always happy to help with any questions. And if is Felix still here? Okay, yeah, Felix was just in here. Just a reminder that Felix is our new Division 10 engineer. Brett's still around. If you weren't here at the last meeting, he has gotten a promotion. So it's promotion season for everybody. But Felix and Mark will be more than happy to help with any of the questions that you have about that. Any board member comments or any comments from Mr. Lathrop, our NCDOT board chair?
Thanks, Madam Chairman. Just a couple. We got the General Assembly at least is temporarily going home, but our agency bill was passed and we got the flexibility to now have 6 public-private partnerships instead of 3 by law. So we'll be exploring that and seeing what communities want to do. We got authority to reallocate some of our money for match money for Hurricane Helene. So it's not new money, but it enables us to get that federal reimbursement. Got a new board member in one of the Senate appointed at-large seats from Greensboro. As you know, we have a House appointed at-large member here, Stephen Rosenberg, to go with me in the division slot. Our cash is good. It's just north of 2 billion. However, in and of itself, that sounds great, but we've got between 9 and 10 billion of committed projects. So it's fine, but it's not, and it's safe and it's, solid, but it's not in and of itself. It's a percentage. We've gotten just under 20% of what we are expected to spend so far out the door for Helene, about just under 900 million. And we've gotten about 20% of that back so far. So we'll expect to get hopefully close to 80% eventually back, but that's a slow process. we just had a big storm in the middle of the state with lots of flooding up around Durham, Alamance, Orange counties. So let's keep our fingers crossed. There's no more big storms this season. And I-40 is reopened. There was a big mudslide right at the border, really more on the Tennessee side, and that's reopened. And our access road to Chimney Rock near Lake Lure has been restored. So go to the mountains and see Chimney Rock. They really, really want tourism up there, and it's all accessible now. So that's what I have got. And as always, y'all call me anytime I can help. I love helping out and doing the best I can. So thank you.
Well, we heard him say he wants to help out, so get your list out. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Okay, everybody moved and everybody seconded. So all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Great. Be safe.